Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for day 2. And we're kicking off where we ended day 1, where we got Justin back, who's going to show us some more amazing things in ZBrush.
Yes, and the return of Glorbo.
And the return of Glorbo as well, yes. So we might be asking you for some more advice on the chat for what we need to do to him as you finish him up.
Yes,
So
absolutely. But I do have a little bit of a treat for you guys. I got some concept art from Prey as well as stuff from Star Trek Discovery we can show.
Fantastic. So if you don't know, if you didn't see yesterday's session, Justin does amazing stuff in ZBrush. And for a lot of your favorite movies, Justin has been developing these character designs. So we'll give you, there's more information on the show, 3dmotionshow.com, where you can find out more about him. And we'll also share some more links about Sanctum Studios at the end of the chat. But over to you, Justin.
All right, sounds good. Alrighty, guys. So I was lucky enough to work with Studio ADI on some of the Prey stuff. And this is just a little bit of the examples of what we got, and we had to rework and make correct for 3D printing, as well as do some design work. And here is just like a raw render of, let's go ahead and full screen this here, a render of his medical device that we got to create. And that 3D printed out and sent it to the set. And this is like a paint over version of what we usually do for everything that comes through the studio. We're just going to keep cycle through these so we can get back to Glorbo because he's lonely. Yeah, just different orthographic views, just for usually the client needs to approve all of these things. So there is his illustrious backpack. It holds at least lunch for 2, I think. And here we got to do a lot of the costume look for his, I guess, kind of clothing options, Let's keep going here. And what you're seeing is like very rough raw sculpts and different ways to kind of clothe our feral predator. I'm sure you guys remember these from the film. These are the Predator's Pokeballs. I'm just kidding. They do very mean things, very nasty things for the Predator's victims. But we went through a lot of different iterations, trying to figure out what we wanted it to look like and how we wanted it to open up and capture its prey. It was a lot of fun to touch this iconic franchise. All right. And let me see here. This is his little cut clamp thing. He throws that around a lot in the film. And we had to come up with a way that it rolled into one piece. And just a real quick look, hey, there's Glorbo. And here is the mask. Now the mask was sculpted by Michael on the ADI team, but I was lucky enough to design the interior because we had to put some technology in there. And I think you barely see it in the film, but this is kind of where I went with the design. But yes, really great sculpt by Michael. And we can kind of see a really rough sculpt of the Predator for fitting underneath. But all of this stuff was 3D printed at ADI and finished and molded and casted and did amazing work. I hope you guys enjoyed the film. And if you haven't seen it yet, spoilers, there's a predator in it. Okay, and then here's some Star Trek stuff that we did. Some of this made it in, some of it didn't. That's just the kind of way things go. And a lot of this work was done for directly for the show and also for Alchemy Studios. This was a really fun, massive creature to kind of develop. We got to kind of really go deep on this one. Got to do orthographic views of what the creature might look like, and how it hid itself in gas giants, which was really interesting. And at one point, they wanted me to draw the organs on the inside. I'm not quite sure why, but yeah, that was a fun painting session. This is more character designs for Star Trek Discovery. This is a lot of fun work. So my workflow usually starts with a ZBrush sculpt, and then I do a few renders, and then I throw it into Photoshop and start painting on top to quickly get iterations. This guy did not make it in, but I think he'd be a good addition to the crew. I think it'd be really weird. He looks perpetually tired. I don't know about you guys. This was a fun design to work on. Was crew member Detmer's cybernetic eye attachment. We wanted to upgrade what she currently had in the first 2 seasons because, you know, if you know anything about the show, the tech advances. So at first we wanted it to keep it small and then maybe have all this stuff happen with VFX, and then honestly the best effects are ones that are always in camera, so we kind of chose to go with something that was a little bit more practical and an all-in-one solution. So this was sculpted in ZBrush, and it got the approval, and we printed it out on some Formlabs 3D printers and sent it to the set where they molded and casted it, and was directly applied to the actor. This is more possible alien crew members that we were thinking of adding. Sometimes we do multiple angles if we're trying to sell a design idea. And a lot of this is really fun because sometimes I get handed scans of actors so I can sculpt and design directly on top of the person, so that when we, bring out the ZBrush files, we can slice those pieces up, we can 3D print those as molds, and then they literally pour the latex in there and it fits the actor perfectly, and that's a really, really great, fun way to get things going and make them look really real. This guy's pretty fun. Lots of aliens. I get a lot of phone calls for aliens. Let's do variations. This was one of I believe, the casino dealer. They went with something else. But these are just all the different variations that you have to do. Lots of variations. Over and over and over. This is another one of those where we had the scan of the actor, so we got to kind of play with that a little bit more. Got to do a little bit of the costume design stuff. A lot of these patterns and textures were a little bit too complex to kind of replicate in the makeup department. It's kind of hard to get that exact without it being, a CG model completely. I'm still hoping that someday we can get something like that because I think it's really unique in looking. But yeah, lots of options. Just testing out patterns, colors, different skin treatments, tattoos, tribal stuff, all the good stuff. It's fun. That one's got a little bit of acne problem. It's okay. They'll grow out of it. All right. Okay. All right, so back to Glorbo. He's had a good night's rest here at Siggraph. He went out and had a few drinks, but it's okay.
Could you give us, Justin, a recap for anyone who didn't see your session yesterday about what we're doing with Glorbo? So
Glorbo, we started with a sphere, and we did him in about what was it, an hour? I can't remember. In about an hour. So we've got a good base down right now. So, but I want to get in here and really add some details and spend some time doing that. And hopefully by the end of this demo, we'll have a little posed figure and a nice render to show.
What might be nice also, Justin, is you mentioned that you did some intricate designs, especially for the skull mask for the Prey movie. Is it something you can show us, doing some really fine detail on Glorbo?
Yes, absolutely. Let's just get this going here. You undo this just a little bit here. It was a little too deep for the nostril. There we go. Okay, now we're cooking. Now it's really important to just kind of follow the form in which I've already kind of laid down a lot of these shapes. And we're pretty high resolution right now, so we have plenty of clay to sculpt with, right? I might even raise the intensity here just to kind of get things going and speed things up.
Here's a question for you, Justin. How do you manage your resolution from model to model, especially if you've got something that's really detailed and then you need to work quickly?
I try to do 90% of the design without subdividing, right? That's the beauty of Dynamesh, is that every new shape you create, you could just re-Dynamesh it, and it's gonna, the topology and the polygons are just gonna form to whatever you created. So that's makes my job a lot easier. So that when I am at this stage, I've already kind of gotten a sign-off either from the client or from a director that has approved the design, and now it's just like kind of going in there and doing all the bells and whistles, nice texturing, and prepping it for a final.
Cool.
Yeah.
We did have a question in the chat about how long did it take you to do one photo, was the question. That was Tang was asking this. I'm assuming, Tang, that you mean one character design like this. But Tang might be talking about doing some post in Photoshop and so on.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, let me see here. So this is about an hour. We're about an hour in now on this character. If I am not given any direction and I can just do whatever I want to do, I can have a finished piece in probably about 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Plus changes from the client.
But yeah. And well, whenever you're working for someone else's vision, you have to kind of like make sure that you're adhering to it. It's okay to show new ideas along the way, but you don't want to stray from the path that's already kind of been approved. Because it'll just slow things down. You always got to give them what they're asking for. But if there's something that you feel strongly about, you want to change the design, you're going to have to do that in your off time and then show them and see if they like it. And that's actually the story of the first Predator design. If you go back and you look at the very first Predator design, they had Jean-Claude Van Damme in the suit. And it was supposed to be like a praying mantis-looking creature. And the designers on the film back then really felt that they had a better idea, and that they drew what you currently see as the current Predator. And the client was like, absolutely yes. So they stopped, and Jean-Claude was let go from the movie, and they went with somebody else. But that's interesting, right? Now I'm just trying to make sure that that there's wrinkles where there would be movement, right? So what I tend to look at is a lot of photo of old people, So you kind of see, where the wrinkles are, where they smile, where they, show emotion in their face, around the eyes, and you just mimic that as a way to kind of showcase where the wrinkles would happen.
Would you say that's part of the development over the last 2 decades or so of 3D characters in films? Are the flat areas, which the CG look, if you like.
Yeah, I think that if done right, there's really nice areas of rest. That's something to always be considerate of when you're designing. A lot of early ZBrush users will figure out, I can just subdivide instantly and jump right into detail. And I was one of those. It took me a long time to realize that I was making the work harder for myself by just jumping in and subdividing and start sculpting. Because if there was a major change that needed to happen, I almost had to start all the way over. But it's just also like when you discover alphas for the first time, you're just stamping all over with no rhyme or reason. Once you figure out that areas of rest are more important than hyper detail, I feel like your work gets into another level. And I still struggle with that because I'll get in the zone and just start adding more and more detail because I'm having fun sculpting. But it's just something that I try to be aware of these days is not to go too crazy with the detail and just make sure that everything reads well.
On jobs that are like time limited, do you ever have the luxury of modeling for something which isn't going to be close to the camera, where you can get away with less resolution or less detail, or do you pretty have to much all the time do it in case it ends up next to the camera?
Right. Sometimes we do get that. It's kind of rare though, because most of the time the directors are very savvy and they understand the level of detail that we can get. And I think that the mantra that they use is, they'd rather have it high res and not need it than to need it and not have it. Yeah.
But that still means that's the extra effort.
It does. But luckily, this is fun.
And it's fast as well.
It's fun and fast, yeah. So now I just want to get some major wrinkles in here before I do the heavy stuff.
And also, if there's any more suggestions on the chat or from anyone here, what they'd like to see added to Glorbo. I've forgotten already. Then yes, just chuck that in the chat and let us know if he needs any extra tentacles, or does he need a bigger mouth to eat those pickles?
Let's make sure he's got nice chompers for the pickles.
So which brush are you using for this?
Right now, I'm just using the damn standard, just getting in there and carving. Trying to make sure that I don't go too crazy with this brush because it is a lot of fun. And I alternate between carving into and adding to. It's a great brush for that.
We talked a little bit yesterday about how do you know you're finished, and it's partly, a lot to do with the deadline. But on something like this, how much detail do you typically do before you're satisfied?
Well, one of the things I learned while I was at school at Noman was it's never done, it's just due, right? So that's kind of like the gauge point, I guess, is just you just kind of keep going until you feel you can't do any more. And my sculpture teacher, John Brown, would always say, when you think you're done, wait 10 minutes and keep going, right? So yeah. And it's also knowing about, what you're going to need in production. Like, I could spend time and sculpt out the back, and I do it often because it's a lot of fun, right? But sometimes you just got to get, this design done and out the door, or maybe you have changes and they got to see it in an hour, so you just got to you got to be fast on how you do the changes, and you got to make sure that you're not being destructive in your workflow.
Do you get much guidance about what these characters will be wearing? So whether areas of it are going to be covered by cloth, so you don't need to go into that detail?
Sometimes we get to, and as a concept artist, it's always fun to do the full character instead of just the bust. Most of my work consists of doing just the bust work, and believe it or not, it actually becomes a union issue. You know what I mean? Where like you don't want to tread on costume design union, and you don't want to take away somebody else's job, because some places it's really set up that way. Some productions it's do whatever you want.
So you mentioned you went to Nomen.
Mm-hmm.
How much of the course was studying anatomy and physiology? And this is a silly question because I'm guessing the answer to this. How important is that in your sculpting?
It's major. It's very, very important. When I went to Nomen, I was there for about a year and a half, and I got to take the beginning part of, I believe, their either 3-year course or 4-year course. I can't remember exactly, but a lot of it was in the beginning wasn't 3D at all. It was relearning, color theory, perspective, anatomy, life drawing, and I'm a big believer that I wish I had more time, because I would do life drawing every week, because it only makes you better every time, right? The more you understand about figure and form, the better artist you're going to get. I don't do enough of it. I wish I could do more of it. But yeah, I think it's very, very important.
They've got an amazing studio at Nomen where
they really do.
It's clay. One particular area is just clay, and you go in and you do it in real life 3D modeling.
Oh, that was one of my favorite classes that I got to take there, was John Brown's class. Yeah, absolutely amazing, and it paved the way for me to understand what I was doing in ZBrush.
And there's some direct correlations with some of the tools for doing exactly that, for layering on clay, and then
a lot of the the terminology for a lot of the tools are the same, a lot of the functions are the same. But yeah, I absolutely agree. So now I think we're gonna speed up a little bit. We're gonna work on this horn here.
We got another question for you.
Sure.
You've been working symmetrically all through this model, and of course, not all creatures are symmetrical.
Correct.
So that's another consideration. Do you work symmetrically up to a point and then go asymmetrical?
Yeah. I know of artists that are so good that they do it without symmetry. I've seen Raphael Grassetti put a lot of people to shame doing his live sculptings. For time, I usually leave it on till I'm about 70% done with the sculpture, and then I just kind of turn it off, and I keep, doing all the fine details and make sure that things are a little bit off and they're not so symmetrical. I'll even go in there with the move tool and kind of move some of the features just a little bit, so it's not like an uncanny valley for an alien, I guess. But yeah, that's usually how I go.
Well, that's the ultimate challenge, especially when you're doing humanoid sculptures.
Yeah.
But how much have you done actual humans, talking about uncanny and having to be really accurate?
For human sculpting, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do is either prosthetic or alien or creature based. So I don't get enough opportunity to kind of get in there and do just straight human sculpting. Most of the time we have production models that we're supposed to use and follow. But it's really important that you use those. I use a lot of humanoid models for like costume design and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, still very important. Still very relevant. Still got to know how to draw humans.
And you still got to know what the muscles are under that structure.
I don't know about memorizing every name of them. That's really hard to do. I know a bunch of artists that actually do know that, and that's really impressive. I just know the shapes and where they go. That's about all the time I got. While I was at school, I was plucked very early to kind of start an intern and work on Hollywood features really early. So it was, I was very lucky to have that happen. It doesn't happen that way for everybody.
Well, there's another question for you right there. If you were a ZBrush artist starting out now, what would be your advice about how to get into what you're doing?
A lot of the advice I would take would be take a traditional clay sculpting class, because you understand the importance of sculpting and all of its tools and all the shapes and the forms, the planes of the face, where you want to have your apexes and all that kind of stuff are very, very important, and it translates very quickly into ZBrush. When I was first starting with ZBrush, there really wasn't a lot of stuff online for me to learn from, or if there was, I didn't know where to find it. Now there's ample amounts. If you want to learn from me, I teach on schoolism, and I do a lot of intro to ZBrush because I want to make sure that people learn ZBrush from an artist standpoint and not so much a 3D modeling standpoint, because I feel like that other side can be added at any point.
And we were talking yesterday with some of the other artists about doing personal work and how that then influences your professional career as well.
It does. Personal work is so important. Also, just for the burnout. If you're constantly creating stuff for other people, it's just not fun. I think we were talking about that last night a little bit. There comes a time where I still love what I do, and I love doing stuff for movies and games. But I think for me next, I really want to focus on getting something done for myself personally, whether it's making an IP or creating, even just doing a statue, and learning the ins and outs of 3D printing a maquette by myself without a team. That's kind of where I'm at, Go ahead and change this up here just a little bit.
I noticed on some of your other designs there was fine detail in the eyes. How do you approach that? Do you do that in ZBrush? Do you do some of that in post?
I do some of that in post, yes. It all depends on what the brief says, because you can. I have a lot of Photoshop files where it's just a nice high-res eye in many layers, so that I can, if I want to paint something that resembles an octopus eye or a fish eye or a human eye, that I can kind of swap in between those, and I just kind of keep it in a production mindset where I can pop out and create all kinds of different ones. But yeah. Let's go ahead and do this trick here. What do we want to do here? I want to make this, there we go. So what we're going to do is make his eyes shiny. And then we're going to go back to our matte cap gray. Oh, didn't do it. Let's try that one more time. Yeah. There we go. So now he's starting to come to life. You can kind of see a little bit of light in his eyes. We might have time to paint some eyes in there, but usually I do that in Photoshop just because I need to be able to make it have. I need to be able to make changes quickly and easily. So now we're going to go ahead and do a real quick trick here. No. I'm going to grab an alpha brush here, and I'm going to set that to spray. And I want to sub that. And what I'm going to do now is just kind of start... Oop, that's a little too high. Let's see here. We might even divide it one more time and get into 17 millions. And I just want to add a little bit of that texture to the skin. Just want to follow the shape of the neck. See how it makes it look like I spent hours sculpting every little wrinkle?
You mentioned before that you do a lot of bust work for the designs. What's your workflow when you then develop that into a full character, to a full creature?
Well, what's really great about a lot of this is that Dynamesh holds so much of the detail. I will have to go back in and re-sculpt a little bit of, all the fine detail, but for the most part, I will literally just merge. I'll create a body off of this, and then just merge it to all together and start sculpting it from there. Or I can keep it separate. Depends on if there's a costume element, like if there's like a high-tech collar, then I can just keep it all separate and I just build it off of there. I looked at, when I started to do things like that, I looked at a lot of just toys, how they make toys, and was like, okay, well, these are all separate parts. If I keep it all separate parts, then I can have the freedom to change things in the design phase. You don't want to go too crazy with the alpha. You don't want to go everywhere. Because what you'll see now is, like, even now I'll lay that stuff down, and then I'll just come back and I'll start tapping the smooth button just to kind of knock it back just a little bit.
You are, of course, using a tablet for doing these things. How do you manage the sensitivity? What's your preference for that?
Well, you know what I like about these new Sense tablets is that you can adjust all of your functions with the press of a button right here. And it's built into the tablet, which is really, really nice. There's a lot of options. The tablet's also really ergonomic, so there's no like hard edge to it, so it allows me to not continue my carpal tunnel problems that I've developed over the years. But yeah, it's pretty nice. I flip back and forth from using tablets now and then, but yeah.
Is that a personal preference, or is that helping manage the physical effects of sculpting all day?
A bit of both. I do a lot of traveling, and so the tablet, especially the Sense tablets, are perfect for traveling. They're a great size and they're durable. And you can't beat the pressure sensitivity on this.
It's a question that often comes up when people are learning ZBrush. Do I need to get a tablet, or can I get away with it with a mouse?
You need a tablet. At the bare minimum, you need a tablet. Like the only thing I can say is, like, you can do all this with a mouse, but on some level, work is always a competition, right? Especially if you're freelance, and not to toot my own horn, but you're not going to beat me. You're not going to beat me if I have a pen.
So if anyone was watching the show yesterday, you'll remember that Justin is the world champion at speed sculpting, and you have a belt.
One of. Yes. Do
you have a belt for that?
There's many champions out there. Yes. Yeah. Yes, I do have a belt. It's very nice. Given to me by the great Paul Gabori.
The Paul Gabori of ZBrush. Yep. He'll like that.
Get in here and work with these eyes a little bit. Oops. I don't need paint. There we go.
So when you get to this stage where you're just working into the fine details, then what have you got in mind for the next steps?
So for the next steps, it's going to be, I might do a little bit more color variation, but it's more going to be about trying to figure out, what do I need to do with the face? Is there anything I can add to add some character to it? And then how I'm going to pose it, And with busts, it's kind of easy. There's only so many angles in which you can capture it. But, yeah, it's a lot of fun at this point. You really start to see the character start to come alive. See, now's about the time where I could probably start going in here and start moving some things around and turn off symmetry. And like already, it's just that human eye trick, right? Where You think it's perfectly symmetrical, but it's really not. Just subtle shapes and changes.
You've definitely got that feel when we were doing a vote on yesterday, whether Glorbo should be kind or mean.
Oh, that's right.
Definitely not kind, is he?
Yeah, and he looks down on the human race, I'm pretty sure, at this point. The lack of pickles as tribute has alarmed and infuriated Lord Glorbo.
Lord Glorbo.
Yes. Since last night, he was promoted. I don't know.
He's now Lord Glorbo.
Lord Glorbo. All right, so probably start. Let me see what time it is here. We got time. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get ready to start posing. But I'm going to go ahead and save this real quick just to make sure that we're good. Okay, and this is the really fun part, is if we built everything up with subdivision levels, going back into some of these really great tools that ZBrush has, using the subtool master, and let me see here, and the transpose master. So right now we're going to go ahead and T-pose this mesh. It's going to run through, and it's going to make everything the lowest subdivision it can. All right, and accidentally, because I have this color selected. We're gonna go back to white. There we go. So all of our high-res information is still there. All of our painting is still there. It's just giving us a proxy model to kind of pose and work with. So from here, it's gonna be all masking. So I'm gonna make sure that I mask off the head where I would like it to turn, right? And we don't want that harsh of a mask, so I'm going to sit here and hold down Control and tap the mask and smooth that out, right? And one of the tricks that I learned early on was we're going to reverse the mask. I'm going to press the gizmo tool here, and instead of turning it there, I want to make sure that I put it where his neck would be, right? That's about right where we want it. So now I can start to kind of give him a little bit of a character.
How much do you have to worry about stretching at this point?
You have to worry a little bit about it, but you have to worry about the stretching in which you're going to see, right? Because there's always going to be stuff that you're not going to see, and in this phase, it's purely visual development. It doesn't matter what's going on the backside of his head. Just make him look pretty. This is his glamour shots for prom. We got to make sure that he looks nice and pretty. Glorbo demands it. We're trying to get that. What was that movie? The Zoolander. What's the blue steel look is what we're going for.
Oh, he is blue.
He is blue. It's blue steel. All right, so we got a little bit of that stuff. It's going to happen a little bit. I'm going to try and correct it a little bit. And I think we're getting close to where I want to be.
Some nice comments on the chat. Dustin's come in. This is great. Love watching Justin work. Thanks for that, Dustin.
Thank you. All right, so let's just say for the sake of demo in time that this is kind of where we want to be for this image. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and clear the mask. You know what I am going to do here is I'm going to go in here with the brush and the move tool, and is symmetry on? Okay, symmetry's off. And I'm going to start raising the shoulder just a little bit to kind of break up the shapes of it just a little bit. All right, so now we can go back up in here into our plugins, and hit the T-pose to sub-T. And we just click that. We don't do anything. We just wait. And ZBrush is going to go, oh, this is where you wanted it.
So can you just walk us through what ZBrush is doing here?
So ZBrush at this point just kind of took note of where I positioned the proxy model and adjust all the subtools to fit that. It took a long time, as you can see. All right, so now we are in the render section. So now we can go ahead and start setting this up for render. And we got to kind of figure out which the angle we're going to do. I think this is our bet here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double the size of the document real quick. That's okay. Yes. It's going to drop this image down into the background. It's okay. We're going to clear that and hit Control N. And we're going to redraw our character out and hit Edit. But now I want to make sure that I zoom out. So that's the full size of the canvas, right? So we want to make sure that we're rendering as much of the creature as we can in this space. It's okay if this cuts this off down here, because I'm going to just blend that out. And then we're going to go in here to our render settings. We're going to turn our details to 4, our pixels to 7. Let me see here. And what are some of the other things we want going on here? Okay. This is a little bit of a complicated part with the rendering. I try to keep it simple for demos and stuff, because you really don't need a lot. Everything else can be adjusted in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and do a test render, which might take a second or two.
Brian on the chat is asking, is this glamour shot going to make it onto a Maxon t-shirt next?
That's up to the man in charge right there.
The answer is we have approval.
We have approval. Awesome. Awesome. Excellent. All right. So now that we have that, we can start to comp these together. Let me see here. I just want to make sure we have the proper software. We got Photoshop on here. Let's go back to ZBrush while that's loading. And I can go in here into my render settings, and we have our render passes, and we can just start saving everything out. And we'll do it all in this new folder here. We hit OK, that's fine. I think there's a shortcut to do all this easier. I always forget it. I'm old and set in my ways. Leave me alone, Internet.
There's many ways to do
There's many ways to do
thing.
everything, yes. Okay, we'll grab the depth just in case we need it. Now, before I start putting all this together, what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that we have some variances in his skin texture as well as some lighting options. So this is kind of like my process and how I do these. So I'm going to go ahead and turn all of the material off, and I'm going to go ahead and just do another render this way. So I have a nice just grayscale image in case I want to go in there and play with different options. So we're going to go in here and render and just save out that shaded one right there, and we'll just do whatever number system you want to do. We can do this. You like that? It's very complicated. Save that. There we go. Is that? And we want to do what kind of material we want to do. Let's do something that feels like it's like a wet material, but I want to make sure that I have a neutral gray. And before I touch anything, I want to make sure that I also save this as a camera angle, because if you move it, you're going to have to redo the whole process all over again. So let's go ahead. All right, now we have this.
Sharon on the chat has got a good question, actually. Hey, Sharon. And she's asking about the next stages and, say, moving it to cinema with GoZ. You mentioned before that sometimes your workflow includes that, and sometimes your workflow is to create the creature and then hand it off to other artists. Yes,
it happens quite a lot. And in the past, I've been using Keyshot for my work through, but I'm in the process now of putting the GoZ, Cinema 4D option into my workflow, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
For those that don't know where GoZ is, can you just point that out in the interface?
Let me see here. GoZ is in the plugin section. Or wait, where is it? I can't remember off the top of my head. Where is the GoZ section at? I usually just have it. So usually what I do is I'll go to the render and external renderer and do this with Keyshot. But I'm trying to remember where. It's been a minute where I've used the GoZ. I unfortunately can't remember right now off the top of my head. Let's see.
No worries. We have got that entire workflow. We ran that on a recent demystifying webinar. So we can put that link in the chat actually for that, where we I think it was in June where we were working with Anna Carolina. We took her sculpt, the Kraken, all the way through to post-production. So I don't think we got time to show that stage of it today. That's where you can find it.
I'm going to do a Chrome pass here and do a render of that.
Kelfire is suggesting on the chat a speech bubble that says, "Where's the party?" But the only branding is a small Maxon cube on the back of the neck.
Nice.
Like Under Armour.
We can always make his spaceship the cube.
That's true.
We could do that. We're world building already. Glorbo's definitely going to be on a T-shirt. Let's see here, and I want to do a basic material look, and now what I want to do is I want to make it super dark, right? And now we're going to get in here and play with the lights just a little bit. I'm going to add a new light. I'm going to turn off this light. And we are going to rotate it. We're going to do a little bit of a rim light here for the character. I don't need any shadows on that.
The art director just messaged us and said that they're interested in seeing the final result in 2 minutes' time.
In 2 minutes' time? Is that all we have? Oh my gosh, we do. A very, very short time allotted. Okay, so it looks like I won't be able to do my full-on lighting techniques, but that's okay. We're going to do this, and we're going to save this out. Oh, no, I don't want to save over that. This is L1, R, there we go. Okay, so now we minimize our ZBrush here. We open up our render, maybe. Oh, there we go. And then I'm just going to grab all these other files and drag and drop those on here. We hit enter a bunch of times, spam it. All right, so now we have everything in here included. I'm going to start turning everything off so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so we have our base render. We're going to go up one. What is this? So this is our kind of our black and white. So we're going to go ahead and turn that to a multiply and play with the opacity just a little bit. We have our AO pass here, which is nice. We'll turn that on multiply as well. Let me see here. Depth mask. Which one is this one? We have a shadow pass. That will also be set to multiply and change with the opacity just a little bit. We have our chrome. I'm going to turn that into... Let's see here. What do I want to do? It's looking like screen, but I really want to lower that. I'm going to do it all the way to 0 and kind of just slowly bring it up just a little bit, so we're getting a little bit of that variation in the color. This is like the spec pass is what I use to kind of do it. Do I want him to feel wet, which is always an interesting discussion in the art department. But so we can go ahead and also put him on a screen layer, and we can play with the fill just a little bit. And usually I'll have a lot more time where I adjust with a lot of the finer adjustments to kind of get to what I want. And then usually the showstopper is when you do this, and we go in here with an adjustment layer. And we start to kind of kill all the black. And that kind of gives us a nice little rim light.
It's nice specular highlights as well.
So now we have our mask layer. How much time do I have left?
You got a minute left.
A minute left. I think I'm going to do it, guys. I think I'm going to do it. We're going to get it. Maybe. Wait, where's my... Shortcut keys are not working here. Where is my selection tool? There we go. So we make a quick mask. I almost jinxed myself there for a second. Did you see that? Let's do that. Let's do that here. All right. Let me turn that off. And now we can kind of play with the background here. And let's grab the gradient tool here. And I just want to kind of just knock some lights in here. Maybe. Oh, I didn't put everything in here. That helps, usually. There we go. Time is crunching, time is crunching.
That's a nice little trick to simulate background lighting.
Thank you, sir, thank you. Let's see here, brushes. And then I can just simply just start, color selecting.
Cool, this is Glorbo in all his glory.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wrap up because we're waiting patiently for Chris Schmidt to do some amazing stuff with Voronoi Fracture in cinema, just coming up in a second. But can we expect to see Glorbo on a social media
Absolutely. We'll finish Glorbo for sure and make sure that he gets his time in the spotlight.
Fantastic. Just before we wrap up, Justin, can you just show where we can find a bit more about you and Sanctum Studios?
Awesome. So you can follow me on ArtStation and find all my social stuff in the About page down here. It also has all the personal LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all the good stuff. And then you can follow what we do at the studio here on Sanctum Studios.
Amazing stuff. So it's so interesting to see that come together just from a simple sphere in such a short amount of time. So that's amazing. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.